In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, and despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble.
Have we got a show for you tonight? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct, right here from the sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent SHR Media Studios, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, 2 miles east of the veritable locus of evil on the entire left coast itself. That would be the Bill Mill, the Capitol building in Sacramento, California, ensconced as it is at 10th and L Streets, where late at night you can hear the death of common sense. You can also, when I leave at about 10:30, I can exit that door right over there and I will smell the noxious stench of sulfur and brimstone emanating from that evil edifice itself. I got to tell you this, you got to belly up to the bar. We've kept your seat, and it's great to see you back. Tonight is Thursday. It is November the 7th, the year of our Lord 2019. Flackbait is going to be your bartender tonight. He pours with the best of them. The lava lamp is, in fact, lighted to, let's see, that would be my right, your left. And I got to tell you this also. We don't water our drinks, just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all right here at the Saloon. Nothing is sacred. The speech is free, but the booze is not. All we ask is that you flush the toilet, jiggle the handle, and don't forget to tip your waitress. This is a very unique and special night. Tonight, for the first hour, we'll be speaking to Andrew Pollock, who has written this book. If you're watching on video, this is the copy. It's called Why Meadow Died. It's about the Parkland shooting. We'll be speaking to Mr. Pollock for the first hour. In the second hour, I have an SHR Media special report, essentially delineating why it is that you should never vacation in California again. And we'll go in depth on that as well. Tonight it's a very special night. I am very glad to be able to have this guest here tonight. And whereas normally I might go into a little bit more detail, I think we need to just kind of cut to the chase. Tonight, we have the distinct honor of speaking to Andrew Pollock. He's the father of Meadow Pollock, who was killed on Valentine's Day of last year in what is known as the Florida Parkland shooting at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, where then 19-year-old suspect 18-1958 shot and killed 17 people and wounded 17 others. As a result of that day, Andrew Pollock wrote the book Why Meadow Died because, first let's welcome Andrew Pollock into the Saloon. Good evening to you, sir, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me on tonight. There's nothing more than what I like when I talk, when I go on radio, is about educating other parents to what happened and grandparents to the truth that what happened in Parkland, not what mainstream media really made it out to be.
I bought this book, and I have to tell you, I bought it about a month ago, and I finished reading it earlier this week. It took me the rest of that time I've got all my, folks, if you're watching on live streaming video, I've got all my tabs here so that I can make references to the book. It took me a while to process this book because there's so much information in here that, as you indicate, most people don't know about. But I want to emphasize this, as you specifically write in the book. Meadow wants me to expose everything, and she wants me to fix it. So many of the customary questions I would normally pose to guests, I'm not going to ask here tonight because we'll be getting immediately to the issues at hand in order to have sufficient time to provide the greatest amount of information to everybody listening here tonight. I want to tell everybody listening that Andrew Pollack has said that if you are interested, you may call in. The number, if you wish to call, is 209-284-3210. I know some people are reticent to do that, but if you have any comments or questions, Mr. Pollack will take your comments or questions. The number again, 209-284-3210. And if you're watching on video, you'll see that, hey, there's that number, as a matter of fact, right now. Before we begin, and I thought long and hard about doing this, and I thought, no, I'm not going to do it. Then I thought, yeah, I will. And I finally decided that, yeah, I'm going to. Before we begin, I have an apology to make to Andrew Pollack and to the survivors and the families of that terrible day. This aspect alone has been grating in me for over a year because I was fairly aware of what occurred that day, woefully uneducated as to the background. But this is, I guess, somehow my small attempt to atone in some way. Those who listen to the show know that I worked for 41 years in law enforcement for both federal agencies and local California Sheriff's Departments agencies, and I retired in 2016. And I want to make that distinction because of the following. I obviously am speaking for myself only, but I hope and I suspect that I'm speaking for hundreds and perhaps many multiple thousands of other peace officers of all kinds and stripes across the United States. So I wanted to say to you, Andrew Pollack, that I personally apologize on behalf of myself and you and U.S. law enforcement, certainly the good deputies of my own department, the Sacramento Sheriff's Department, and other officers in and around Sacramento, for the way in which certain deputies and one specific sheriff of Broward County acted during that terrible day, and unfortunately afterwards as well. We may end up speaking about him later. I do not know of any deputies or officers in my area who wouldn't have done everything humanly and physically possible to utilize all of their training, education, and experience to breach that school and do what all other good cops do. They run towards gunfire. They don't walk, they don't saunter, they don't hide behind buildings, but they run towards gunfire. And we all realize, and we're trained that in any active shooter situation, time squandered equals lives lost. All good cops know this. So to later learn that on-scene deputies, officers whose sole damned job, their only reason for existence at that school, abjectly failed at that job, is, I submit, disgusting and revulsive to all good cops. And for that, I apologize to you, Andrew Pollack, your family, and the families and the survivors of that day. It pains us to think that you and everybody else had to bear witness to that side of law enforcement because the bulk of us are sheepdogs and we take our oaths very, very seriously. So, Andrew Pollack, you and I are a little bit more like kin than I think some people would realize. I think I recognize a driven man when I see one. Are you a driven man, Andrew Pollack?
I would call driven as almost being as you're cursed. To me, I'm so driven that it's like a curse to me. But I really want to tell you what you just said. I appreciate it, and I respect law enforcement like to the utmost extent. And what I had to endure and what I had to see, how my daughter got murdered, to watch these deputies not go in, why there was gunfire, was to listen to you say it. It really affected me, and I'm just going to tell you that it's unbelievable how there was like 7 deputies that day that didn't go into the building, and the only and one because my drive, like you say, the drive that I have, was able to get the one deputy has been arrested on felony charges.
Yep.
Okay, and 4 other deputies have been fired. And when you watch the video, it's just like it's unfathomable not to go in when kids are getting killed. It's not like, just think about it. It's not like it's in a liquor store and there's all adults in there, and or a house where they're selling crack and there's about 10 people in it. These deputies pulled up to a school, you know what I'm saying, where there was children inside, my daughter, and they chose not to enter the building. So it just, I don't know, I don't even know how they live with themselves, these guys. Like I would, 2 of the there was 2 coaches there. They went in unarmed. They worked at the school. They weren't deputies. They went in, they heard the shots, and they got murdered like I would do. I would have went into the building like everyone else on the planet most likely would have went into the building. But that day, there was one deputy. He was right at the school. He went 9 feet from the door. Okay, they drove him to the door. They said the shooter was in the school. He went 9 feet from the door. He heard the shots that killed the coaches that went in unarmed on the first floor, and then he retreated and he hid behind the wall for 40 minutes, where the murderer went from the first floor to the second to the third floor, where he murdered my daughter, where she was shot 9 times. And because of these failed deputies, no one even went up to my daughter on the third floor for over 40 minutes. So, and what it boils down to is the sheriff that was in Broward was a failed sheriff who, thank God we got him removed from Ron DeSantis, who's the governor. But he politicized his whole department. Okay, he put politics over community safety, and it's just a failed sheriff. 10 of his employees failed that day around the school with taking a perimeter where we know, like you said before, and I was listening to you, when you hear gunfire, you're supposed to run towards the fire. It's every shot could be another victim getting killed, and it doesn't matter if you're by yourself or you're with another deputy or with 3 deputies. You go towards the fire, and that's the oath you sign up to. And it's just unfathomable that these guys pulled up to the school and heard these shots and didn't go in.
When you say unfathomable, I have to tell you that even now, I mean, I read the book cover to cover. I bought the book because it was that important. I didn't get a promo copy or any of that stuff. You don't have the money for that, and I don't expect you to. But this was so important to me that I wanted to make sure that as opposed to any other kind of interview, I have knowledge about the topic. And after I got through the first 4 or 5 pages, just when you thought it was bad, it just gets worse. The deputy that we're talking about and the name, I'm not even going to give the name. The name is almost unimportant. But let's just say that particular deputy's job was an SRO, what we call a school resource officer, and the sole duty of that deputy was to protect the kids on that property. That's the only job that deputy had. Wearing the uniform of a Broward County Sheriff's Department deputy and being armed with a sidearm. It's reprehensible. It's inexcusable. It's unfathomable. It is a conflict, and I cannot speak for anybody else except me, but I cannot help but think that, and I've gone to law enforcement pages for the show tonight. If people want to listen, they may be here. I'm speaking only for myself, but it turns my stomach to have heard of a situation like that. I asked you if you were a driven man because I was in a similar situation, but it wasn't family to me. It was the law enforcement family. One of our deputies was killed in a vehicle collision in 1998 due to a very simple and an easily repairable driving error. I became a driven man myself, and I designed an entirely new emergency driving course to make sure that her death was not in vain. That was my task at that time. Andrew Pollack, you're doing your level best to ensure that your daughter's Meadow's death was not in vain, aren't you?
Yes, I am, and that's what drove me. Like you say, driven. Driven is like some people are driven. Like I said, it's a curse, but I was driven to educate parents to what happened to my daughter in the school, so every parent could read my book and actually use it as a manual to see what's going on in the public school system. So we talked. So that was one of the failures. The police officers, the deputies that didn't go in, but leading up to it, there was so many red flags that went off that it was like it was just unbelievable.
It was a cascade. It was a cascade of failures.
Multiple failures. He was so dangerous that they had to frisk him every morning before he went into the school, and they didn't allow him with a backpack in the school. But they don't tell parents of these policies of allowing these type of children in the schools, in the public schools, and that's the problem I have with public schools about lax discipline policies. You live in California. Do you know that it's illegal now in California to suspend a disruptive kid? They put that into law like a month and a half ago. That Gavin Newsom signed it into law that it's illegal to suspend disruptive children in schools in California. I,
oddly enough, have that article right here, and you're absolutely correct, as of September 9th of this year. The headline of this is from edsource.com. California to extend ban on pushing students out of school for disruptive behavior. Beginning next July, teachers in California will no longer be allowed to suspend elementary or middle school students from school for disrupting classroom activities or defying school authorities as the result of a law signed by Gavin Newsom on Monday. Folks, the point of me having... I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
I'm saying, like, even if you're a Democrat, okay? Like, it's unfathomable for me because I'm the furthest from a Democrat. So how could you think sending your child to a school where there's no consequence, okay, could create a good environment for your child in that type of environment where a kid could do whatever he wants, be disruptive with no consequence? It's just, and those are those policies where my daughter went to school that I didn't know about that led up. It creates an environment of in the whole school district of not holding kids accountable, and it creates a chaotic environment. And it was in Broward, and now it's in where you live. You're in Sacramento. It's in the whole state. Even if you're a Democrat, you got to see there's something wrong with it.
Folks, the book is called Why Meadow Died. And like I say, I have a copy of it right here. It says the people and policies that created the Parkland shooter and endanger America's students. It is almost 300 pages. There's great detail in this book. You can get it wherever books are sold. I would highly recommend it. There's so much detail in this. information the likes of which I guarantee everyone listening has never heard before. You tell truth to power, Andrew Pollack, in places and to persons you previously trusted and never thought, my guess would be, you never thought you'd need to, pointing out the lies, the hypocrisy, and the cover-ups before and after Valentine's Day of 2018. And the lies and the corruption and the cover-ups are legion in this situation. And to make matters worse, losing your daughter Meadow on that day, you turned over rocks and peeled back terrible scabs, revealing... I tried to think of words for this. It's a corrupt and, in my estimation, an insanity-ridden system that is quite effectively infecting the rest of the U.S. school districts, even as we talk here tonight. It was tough. I'll be honest, I don't have any kids, and I'm not going to pretend to know what you went through with Meadow. I won't even begin to broach that topic. But to read through this book as well and clearly delineated as it is, there's so much information in here. I highly recommend the book, if for no other reason than, folks, take off the damn glasses and watch and see and understand and learn what is happening with your kids in your public school, no matter where you are. Andrew Pollack, did you have an inkling of what kind of stuff was happening in Marjorie Douglas Stoneman High School?
Listen, where I lived, the average house was like 500,000. Okay. I lived in a great community, and I thought, I was doing the right thing for my daughter, putting her in that school in a good community.
Right.
But I didn't know of what was going on in that school with the policies. Okay. The policies through the whole county were, if you could believe it, kids were allowed 4 misdemeanors per school year without ever getting reported to law enforcement. Okay, so they could punch a teacher, they could rob an iPhone, they could sell drugs under a felony amount and never get reported to law enforcement. And these policies are throughout the whole country, And I didn't know, like I said, if you could believe it, they had to frisk the murderer every day before school. They wouldn't let him in the class into the school without getting frisked, or he wasn't allowed in with a backpack because he was so dangerous. But parents, parents throughout the whole country, it's not just happening in Broward. There's these policies throughout the whole country with these lax leniency policies, or where they'll take a kid that's mentally ill or emotionally disturbed, and they label them special needs. And they're in schools throughout the whole country, and it's terrible because ask any parent that had a kid murdered in a school, they would say, I couldn't believe it happened to me. And then, it happens. And, it happened to me, it happened to my friends in Texas. It's just a horrible thing to live with.
Andrew Pollack, would I be correct in suggesting that, just like California is, to me, it's the perfect illustration of what a state shouldn't be, the Broward County Public School District is the perfect illustration of what to do if you're trying to create or embolden someone the likes of a guy like 18-1958, which is the number of Nicholas Cruz. It's like this festering petri dish of, you want to do it wrong? Okay, do it the exact same way that Broward County did. They screwed it up by the numbers.
Well, let me tell you. So the superintendent that came to Broward, he came from Chicago. He worked for Arnie Duncan, who was the Secretary of Education under, back then it was Obama, the president.
Right.
He hired Arnie Duncan. Arnie Duncan was linked to Superintendent Robert Runcie. My luck, he comes to Broward County from Chicago. And what his objective was to end the school to prison pipeline, lower in suspensions, lower expulsions. So when he came there, he just ended everything. No more arrests for kids, no more suspensions, no more expulsions. So after a year, he had statistics that he reduced students from getting arrested by 70%. But what they do is they just stop reporting crimes in the schools, and they never reported suspensions, expulsions, or anyone or kids that need to be introduced to law enforcement or arrested for committing a crime. And that's what he brought to Broward. And then that's what happens when it creates this environment of just chaos of kids with no accountability and no consequence. And that's what's happened in Broward, and it's across the whole country. And that's why I tell parents, I go, if you really love your kids, like I loved my daughter, and you use this book, Why Meadow Died, as a manual, and most likely parents out there that are listening, their kids wouldn't get shot in the school, but why put your child in an environment where there's the disruptive kids or mentally disturbed kids, and they give them more rights than your children at the school, and that's really what led up to my daughter getting murdered. You know, before the first week where my daughter, she wasn't even buried yet, the superintendent and the sheriff were they wanted more gun control. They were blaming the NRA, and my daughter wasn't even buried, and they were just trying to cover up their bullshit with these policies of not holding kids accountable, and I had to pull it out of them all. You know what I'm saying? If Mr. Pollock doesn't do anything to hold these people accountable, it just gets brushed under the rug, and they blame gun control. They say, what do they call these things? Assault rifles, weapons of war, which there's no such thing. But if I don't hold them accountable, none of this thing comes out where these kids, they have these mentally disturbed kids in the schools, and it's not just in Broward. So I just want parents to read this book and to see what's going on in these public schools. And even if you don't read my book, I don't even care if you read my book or not, but don't put your kids in a public school that have these type of policies where there's, you got vouchers for private school, do whatever you have for private school, charter school, or homeschool.
Andrew Pollock, I have your book. It's right here in the studio, and with your permission, I'd like to read excerpts from the book for the rest of the in various points of the rest of the interview.
Yep.
Superintendent.
And everything, Yeah, go ahead.
Superintendent, Broward School Superintendent Robert Runcie, the guy that you mentioned, actually had the balls to say that regarding the shooting, the school district did everything right.
Right. Yep.
And if you read this book thoroughly, you come to understand that is such a bald-faced, naked lie. Okay, so here's what happened. This is from the book. Runcie's top staff were given huge pay raises shortly after Kim and her colleagues tore into Mickey Pope, and you'll understand all the players when you read the book. And after a local NPR reporter reported that, the suspect had been referred to Promise, and when we, let's see, what do we got? About one more minute before the bottom of the hour break. When we come back from the break, Andrew Pollock, I'd like to ask you about Promise. But basically, these people got raises. A guy named Pope got a $24,000 salary increase to $175,000. That guy Runcie, the superintendent of the district, he makes almost $500,000 a year. After this, folks, these people got raises. They got raises. So we're talking to Andrew Pollack, and he's kind enough to be on the show tonight. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, I'd like Andrew Pollack to talk a little bit about the Promise program that was started at Broward. We're going to get into a whole bunch of different topics. If you want to call in when we come back, the number is 209-284-3210. Andrew Pollack has said that he will take questions and comments, should you care to, 209-284-3210. I am BZ, the bloviating Zeppelin. You are listening to Andrew Pollack, and I am here, right here, in the Saloon tonight. We'll be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America, one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian sackheads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty void in Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to the Bloviating Zeppelins Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent SHR Media studios. I have the distinct pleasure tonight of speaking to a very unique guest, Andrew Pollack. He's the author of the new book, Why Meadow Died: The People and Policies That Created the Parkland Shooter and Endanger America's Students. Before the break, I asked Andrew Pollack if he might explain what the Promise program was, but then I thought, okay, wait, this actually should have been my first question. Has the district, the Broward Public School District, secured any of their schools? Are any of the schools even the slightest bit safer over 1 year later?
Oh, they are trying. You know, we passed some laws in Florida that requires one SRO, which is a school resource officer, per 1,000 students. So we did a lot on that, but Broward is just a bunch of, it's like a cesspool of Democrats, Broward County. The supervisor of elections was removed by Governor Scott when he was there. The sheriff was removed by Governor DeSantis because they're just incompetent. But I could just say, I can't speak for Broward generally because it's just run by these bureaucrats that are unethical that I don't want to deal with. But in general, the state of Florida, from what happened, was able to see what happened and made a lot of changes, and there's been a lot of progress in Florida, but I can't speak for Broward County.
Okay. All righty. Before the break, I said I wanted to touch on the Promise program, and that was kind of the stellar program that Superintendent Robert Runcie brought from Chicago, I believe, and it's kind of similar to the programs that various folks are attempting to foist on school districts all across the United States, which is why if you're a parent with kids in schools today, you need to know what the hell is happening in your schools. But
you know, when it's easy, you know, you say parents need to know. Like, I didn't know, okay?
Yeah.
So I should be the last parent that I say, like, that's my thing. I should be the last parent that actually could say, I didn't know what was going on in the school. Like, right now, no parent should say that. Like, if something happens to your kid, you can't just, like, shrug your shoulders and say, oh, I didn't know that was going on in schools. That's not an excuse anymore after what happened to me and how vocal I've been throughout the whole country about this. There's not a parent out there that could say, I can't believe this happened to me. Like, I don't want to hear it. Like, if something happens, I don't want to hear a parent say, I can't believe it. I didn't know. And I take it seriously when I say that about parents. They shouldn't be. They got to really take it serious what's going on with their kids, because most likely, you know, they're not going to get shot like my daughter was murdered. But why put them in an environment like you know, where it's just chaotic. It's not safe. It's disruptive. Why put your kid in that environment when they want to learn, and you're putting them with a kid who's emotionally disturbed, mentally ill?
You make an excellent point. Why would you want to jeopardize your kid like that at all? It's an excellent question. The Promise program itself, Andrew Pollack, there are tons of references that I want to make to your book, and I'm not going to have a fraction of the time necessary to do that. Can you kind of indicate a little bit of what that Promise program was about, and did Cruz actually have anything to do with that?
Yeah. So the Promise program came. I didn't know anything about this stuff. You know what I mean? I was never political, and then I just dove into this because my daughter was murdered, and I wanted to know everything that happened, or if there was policies or people that failed. So when I started looking into it, I heard about this Promise program because kids knew how violent he was. Teachers knew, and they all were calling me and telling me, Mr. Polk, this is what happened. Mr. Polk, he did this. He was so evil. You know, in middle school, he dreamt of killing people. He was so violent, they had to tie his desk down. They had security walk him from school, from classroom to classroom. And these are all because of these policies of not holding kids accountable. So you ask about the Promise program. The Promise program was introduced, brought to Broward County from the superintendent, this failed leader, Robert Runcie. And his whole thing was to reduce the school-to-prison pipeline and not hold kids of color accountable, because the teachers, his philosophy was, the teachers were racist. All the teachers in every school was racist, and we couldn't leave it to them to decide if the kid was disruptive or needed to be suspended or expelled. So it all started with him when he came to Broward, and he took that away from the teachers, and he lowered suspensions, expulsions, arrests by 70%. And it just created this environment, this culture of leniency throughout the whole school district, because if you're a teacher, why would you report a kid when nothing happens? So it created this culture, and this culture is throughout the whole country, everywhere, where kids could sell drugs, they could assault a school teacher, assault another student, and not be held accountable. And all these things are going on, and that's why when parents say, "Oh, why, look at all these school shootings," my daughter's murderer threatened to shoot the school up, was never arrested. Punched his mother's teeth out where she needed $8,000 worth of dental work, never arrested. The sheriff's department went to the killer's house between him and his brother 40 times. He trespassed at the school after he threatened to shoot the school up and was never arrested. So there were so many crimes that he committed and threatened to commit suicide, where he could have been committed, where they could have done an evaluation on him for drinking gasoline, running in the street, writing the word kill all on his books, and never committed in a hospital where it would have went on his background or arrested. So these are just policies that's going on in these schools, that what I uncovered, and I wouldn't want any other parent to feel the way I do. I have to live with an open cut across my body for the rest of my life that I'll never heal from. It's just going to stay open and ooze, and it just kills me for what happened to me. And no parent should put their child in an environment like I did. And I got to live with it forever, man, that I put her there with these bureaucrats that ran the school district that had this garbage going to school with my daughter, and I never knew about it.
You mentioned in the book, and I may not get the quote exact because I'm not on that page right now, but you said it's 50% the blame of this guy, Cruz, and it's 50% the blame of essentially the administration of Broward County Public Schools in league with the Broward County Sheriff's Department. Do I have that kind of correct?
Yeah, no, the way I feel, people ask me, like, listen, I'm for the death penalty. If I could put gasoline on the killer and light him up with a match, I would do it, man. You know what I mean? I have no problem killing the person that murdered my daughter, I would love it to be able to do it. But for me, I don't really think about the killer anymore, because he's locked up in a cage, okay, and he ain't never getting out.
Right.
What bothers me so much is all the other people that failed.
Yes.
The mental health people, the people at the school, the sheriff's department, the FBI dropped 2 tips, these policies that were in the schools. So for me, I'm done with the killer. He's sitting there. I need to expose. My daughter would want me to expose Henderson Health, who dropped the ball, that knew he was going to be a killer. That was the mental health facility. Superintendent Runcie and his school district that dropped the ball. The sheriff's department. All these people, and also the monitor. Could you believe there was a monitor at the gate that day? Okay, I'm going to tell you two things that a lot of your listeners don't know. One monitor, he watches him get out of the car with a rifle bag, like a Cabela's rifle bag, and he watches him walk from the street through the school, through an open gate, and gates shouldn't be open. It's like since Columbine or Sandy Hook, that was the protocol. Gates aren't open until a certain amount of time. My daughter's school, the gate was open. He watches the kid, the murderer, walk through the gate with a rifle bag, okay? He radios his friend, his homie, he calls it, because I have all the tapes because I'm deposing all of them. He radios into the second floor to his friend Taylor, okay, his homie, but he calls it homie. He goes, "Hey, homie, we got a suspect coming through into the building," and so he warns him. This guy Taylor comes from the second floor. Okay, this is unbelievable because no one even knows, but I did this deposition about a month ago. So Taylor comes down. He sees the murderer on the first floor, and the gun's not even out. The gun's still in the bag. He doesn't go towards him and just yell at the kid and tell him to stop. He retreats. He goes up into the second floor, this guy Taylor, okay, with a 50-year-old man. He opens up a closet, and he hides in the closet. So what happens is when he's in the closet, he's got his radio and he's got a cell phone. He knows now on the second floor, he hears the gunshots, hides. Now he listens over the loudspeaker, David Taylor, and he hears the office telling all the children to go out and exit the building. There's a fire going on. So Taylor, who's in the closet, he doesn't get on the radio and say, "No, it's gunfire." He lets my daughter and the other kids on the third floor go out into gunfire and get murdered while he saves himself in a closet, another guy. Could you imagine living with yourself? You're 50 years old, and he's hid in a closet, and he doesn't get on the radio to warn my daughter and the other kids not to go out into the hallway, that there's a kid with a fucking rifle and shooting kids in the hallway. Could you imagine that?
Everybody there knew who he was. Everyone there knew his proclivities. Everyone there knew that he had murdering, killing ideations all the time. He was not hesitant in telling people this, and they did nothing. And on top of that, of course, we had the Broward County deputy who decided that his job was not to do anything that particular day. Speaking of Broward County, I want to read this passage. I read this and I went 210 over 190. But this is the kind of people that are running Broward County, or at least they were at the time. There's a young kid named Anthony who's shot. He's in the hospital. So you write, 2 days after the shooting, 2 men from the Broward County Sheriff's Office barged into Anthony's hospital room. Royer tried to tell them that Anthony couldn't speak yet and couldn't give a statement, but the words didn't come fast enough. An officer shook Anthony's hand, gave Royer a slap on the back, and left. Royer hadn't seen the other officer take a picture, but the next day he saw that a photo of his son and Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel had gone viral. Royer was furious. He felt his son had been exploited by a police department that he hadn't been able to protect him. Sheriff Scott Israel goes in for a PR picture in a hospital with an injured kid on the down low to fake out the kid's dad, because he wants to be seen, I suppose, as the great guy. This is nuts, folks. I said in the promo stuff, I said, this is a cautionary tale. No, this is a horror story. It's just.
Do you know that he signed on to that Promise program, Israel? Right?
Yes.
And All right, and he changed the protocol. Okay, I'm going to tell you a big thing what he did. So, active shooter training, it was always deputy shall go in the building if they hear shots. Like it's no question, you shall go in.
Right.
He changed it to may go in. Okay, in his protocol.
That's permissive.
Deputy may. Yeah. So, and we all knew after Columbine that every shot could be another kid getting murdered, and it's you shall go in. You don't even wait. Every shot is another kid. You go in, you go towards the gunfire. And this sheriff, who had, it's unbelievable what I had to go through for the last month, because I was actually in Tallahassee. This piece of garbage actually tried to get his job back, and there was a special master's hearing, and I was in Tallahassee. I had to lobby senators to make sure that they didn't put this piece of garbage back in office in Broward. They were actually thinking of reinstating the sheriff after this great governor of Florida removed him and suspended him. So that's what I had to do. But I'm just going to tell you, so that day, people don't even realize. They think it's just one deputy, this Peterson, this piece of shit, that went to the building and didn't go in, okay? And then he hid. You know what I mean? He hid behind the wall for where he sat there for 40 minutes. But it was only just him. There was another about 6 deputies that pulled up and took a perimeter around the school. Could you imagine taking a perimeter around a school when you hear gunshots going off? It's unbelievable, man. I don't even know how these guys live with themselves. You pull up to a school and you're looking at the school, okay, and you're hearing gunshots, and you hide behind your car. It's just unbelievable. And that was about 7. Then they had a captain pull up, okay, that was in that district. She pulls up, and she don't go in the building. She doesn't tell the deputies to go in the building. And there was about 10 of BSO, Broward Sheriff's Office employees that failed that day. And then Coral Springs Police Department pulls up, but it's already too late, and they just rush the building. They go right in and do what most police officers in the country would do, is go towards the gunfire. But it was already too late, and my daughter waited 43 minutes on the 3rd floor till they even got to her, laying there dead. So that's what she had to deal with.
The point that you made, and I'm sure that you are persona non grata all over Broward County because you didn't join the troops saying, "Oh my God, it's all about guns. It's only guns." Right. Guns were not even a part of it. Yeah, of course, he had a tool and he used a rifle. Okay, but the programs that he was in, and it's how do I say this? It's leftists that kept the program that they so revere from working. Had they allowed Nicholas Cruz to suffer consequences for the crimes he committed, and had there been arrests, particularly of a weapons nature, no one would have sold him a gun. From the book that you wrote, Cruz threatened to kill his brother and his mother. Zachary had always bullied him. Cruz slept with scissors under his pillow for fear that his brother would attack him. Cruz also became violent and threatening toward his mother. At one point, he asked Linda to drive him to Walmart so he could buy a video game. When she refused, he punched her in the face, just like you mentioned. He punched her in the face so hard that she had to get dental work done. Cruz got his AR and put it to his mom's head. So he bought that rifle lawfully, but it wouldn't perhaps have been lawfully had people done their damn jobs and marked him as what he was, incompetent and unfit to do that. This is it's the worst scenario you can possibly envision if you're a parent with a child in a school.
Could you imagine so BSO, Broward Sheriff's Office, got a tip that he was going to shoot the school up, right? On his Instagram. He had a rifle, he showed his guns or whatever he did, and he was going to shoot the school up, okay? And they don't follow up on that tip, okay? The deputy, so Deputy Eason, that's his name, he gets a tip from whoever, they gave him the call that this kid was going to be the shooter. So he doesn't follow up on it properly, Deputy Eason, okay? That guy, like a year before he shoots the school up. And he's one of the deputies that pulls up to the school and doesn't go in. Now he got fired. But he pulled up to the school, doesn't go in, and then he gets the tip. He got the tip prior that he was going to shoot the school up and didn't do anything either. So, it's just one failure after the other that allowed this all to happen. And no parent, that's why I'm saying. Forget even just the deputies, but it's these policies, how evil this kid was and how mentally disturbed he was. And these kids, if you think it was just in Broward, think of what happened in Dayton. It was the same scenario with the Dayton shooter. He threatened to shoot the school up. He had a rape list. Everyone knew he was a sick, mentally disturbed kid. And then a few years later, he does and commits that shooting in Dayton, and they all knew how evil he was. And if kids aren't arrested or involuntarily committed, where it goes on their back, when it goes to a Baker Act or when they're mentally disturbed, then it goes on their background. Background checks don't work. Democrats always are saying we need universal background checks. We need background checks. But if you don't arrest people when they threaten other people's lives, there isn't a background. And that's why my daughter's brother was able to buy that rifle legally, and because he was never arrested.
They want a program, they want laws, but they won't obey the laws. They won't allow the program to function as it should have. Superintendent Robert Runcie, he literally, in my opinion, in Andrew Pollack, you telling me if I'm even remotely close to this, Robert Runcie basically is having himself and everybody else in Broward County cook the books in order to minimize suspensions, referrals, and avoid arrests for students because it makes them look better. Is that right?
That's the way. That's the way it is throughout the whole country. Suspensions are down, expulsions are down, arrests, even for misdemeanors, are down. And that's what's going on throughout the whole country. But it's not happening in private schools. When's the last time you heard about a shooting in a private school? It doesn't happen.
Yeah, never.
Never, because they don't deal with these type of children that are mentally disturbed. And there's a consequence. You go to a private school, if you act out, you're getting expelled. They're not even going to deal with this. There's like zero tolerance when you go to a private school, where in public school they allow chance after misdemeanor after felony. You could have a fight, assault a teacher with no consequence. And that's what's going on in the schools. And teachers are leaving the industry, that profession, faster than any other profession just about in the country, because they're underpaid and they have to deal with these type of disruptive kids, and they can't find good teachers anymore. And that's what's going on, and it's going to be a trend in this country where parents are going to stop, putting their kids in private or homeschooling is huge right now. There's no problem. I don't see any issues with homeschooling. A lot of parents write me all the time and saying they're homeschooling or charter or private just to get their kids out of these public schools.
Folks, this is Andrew Pollack. He's been with us for the entire hour. He wrote the book Why Meadow Died. If you think this book is an anti-gun screed or some kind of light glossing over or simplistic examination of the Parkland shooting on Valentine's Day of 2018, you couldn't be more wrong. Andrew Pollack names names, digs deep, exposes the terrible obfuscation, the wrong-handed, the dangerous thinking involved in the creation of programs that do exactly the opposite of what alleged, air quotes, educators seemingly intend for them to do. You have to get the book. If you have kids in public school, you need to read the book. It's a perfect illustration of what not to do in a public school district, but it's a perfect illustration of what you should do if you're trying to create shooters like Nicholas Cruz. Andrew Pollack, let me ask you this. We talked about, and you mentioned the article and what is happening in California with Governor Newsom. Because I looked at that, and that stuff is boilerplate. What they had written in there is boilerplate stuff, right out of what occurred in Broward County. You've lost your daughter, Meadow. You've written a book. You've met hundreds of people. You've been on the road. You have served tirelessly. You have exposed corruption. I'm sure you've made cockroaches scatter. You've caused sphincters to become watertight. At this point, have you exposed all that you think is required of cleansing that stuff and bringing stuff to the light of day? In other words, what is next for you, Andrew Pollack, in what you're trying to do? What's your path, and where do you think you're going to go next?
I feel like I did a lot more than anybody. You know, and I really educated a lot of parents, and I put my life, like, I just did everything that I could do. But now it's, I feel like I did everything. I don't want to deal with politicians day in and day out. It's not my thing.
Right.
I did everything, and now I got a playground. I'm going to be building where we lived in Parkland in Broward. There's a playground going up, and I feel like I did everything, and I'm like done with it. I have this book to educate parents, and they got to take it and do what they feel is right for their children. And I'm just gonna, I bought a ranch out in Oregon, north of you. You're in Sacramento, so I'm about 4 hours. I'm in Jackson County.
Okay,
and I don't want to keep fighting. You know what I mean? I'm done fighting, and it's up to parents. Like I did the president. I actually met. I met with the president.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I did so much with him. He ended these policies that Obama put in place about not holding children accountable in schools. He did that for me, and not just for me. He did like 9 months of research. It's like people that do policy for him. He ended it. So I did that with the president. I passed a bill in Florida to make every kid safer. I wrote a book for every parent in the country. School districts across the country are giving teachers the possibility to be armed and trained in schools because of what happened with my daughter getting murdered. And I don't know, I feel like I'm done. You know what I mean? I don't need to do anymore. That's the way. I'm not in a bad way. I'm just like, I did everything I could. I just want to, I live with an open cut that I'm never going to heal from. And I got two beautiful sons that I love so much. And I'm not into politics or dealing with, I don't really like Democrats. And I don't like being around them. And my life is pretty much changed since my daughter was murdered. And I just want to live in peace out in Oregon, out in the woods. Really, that's about it. That's it in a nutshell, buddy.
Andrew Pollack, father of Meadow, dad, husband, friend to a lot of people. I have to thank you so very much for taking the time to be here tonight to talk to me and to inform my listeners. You are an amazing dude. You are a really strong guy. You are a driven man. So I got to thank you so much for being here tonight. Because you're fighting for Meadow. You're fighting for any future Meadows. Because that's the point, isn't it? The point was fix it and try to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Well, I did everything to honor my daughter. Would want everybody to know what happened. You know what I mean? And there's nothing I wouldn't do for my daughter. You know, there's like it would take an army to stop me for what happened. And I'm exposing everybody that let that happen. I'm holding people accountable, from deputies to people in the school district to supervisor of elections to, you know, just everyone that touched and made this, that let this happen. I'm holding them accountable, and I'm not gonna stop for nothing, because my daughter knows that I'm a lion, you know, and I love my daughter. And you know, that expression is, there's nothing a father wouldn't do for the love of his daughter. And that's what I'm doing. I'm going to hold them all accountable. And parents, you know, you could take it. You could think it's never going to happen to me, like I thought. Well, you could read my book, Why Meadow Died, and don't, you know, just don't put your kid in that type of environment, or your child. And, you know, what I could tell, like, to a lot of parents, I would tell them, listen, like, everyone asks me, what would you tell the parents? I would say, you know what, put your phones down. Your kid, tell your kid, put your phone in your pocket. Your parents, put your phone away and just take a walk with your child around a corner, whatever, quarter mile, half mile, and just talk with your kid, because I lost that opportunity. And every parent should do that with their child. Just take a walk and put the phones away, and then don't read my book, and don't put your kid in that type of environment like I did.
Andrew Pollack, thank you for your time, sir. God bless.
Thanks.
You take care, sir, and you have a good night. Thank you ever so kindly for being here tonight.
You too. Have a good night, buddy. Good night.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
sir. No one should have to go through that. I'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America, one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific. where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian Sackheads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty voided Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening. We just got through listening to Andrew Pollock. Got a copy of his book right here. And if you're on video, live streaming, you can see the copy of the book right here, which I have purchased. It's called Why Meadow Died, by Andrew Pollock. The people, the policies that created the Parkland shooter and endanger America's students. I wanted to do this next story, and I'm torn between reading more. I have, if you can't see, I have this book all tabbed out with passages that are unbelievable. Literally unbelievable. The research that went into this book is astounding. I'm sure some of it is done by this guy named Max Eden as well. But the information that they unearthed about the shooting is enough to make you sick. And you can't help but ask yourself, how can we, as a civilized nation, continue to allow this to happen? No, I'm not talking about guns. I'm not talking about the Second Amendment. I'm talking about how we can let leftists hijack this society. That's got to stop. If you don't vote next year, whatever happens is on you. I'm done with bipartisanship. I am done with compromise. I've had it. This society, this country, everything that is good and dear with this nation is at stake. Everything. Their policies, leftist Democrats and the American media maggots, aided and abetted by their policies, kill people, kill kids. So I think next week I'm going to get into the book perhaps a little bit deeper and read you some of the things. You'll be absolutely gobsmacked. You'll be astounded that adults, educators, are acting in a way like this. It's absolutely amazing. And by the way, I just thought I'd tell you, stay the hell out of California.
This is an SHR Media Network special report.
It's funny because Mike Pasqua in chat just remarked on this, and my SHR Media special report tonight is I'm going to delineate to you almost an endless list of why it is that you should never vacation in California again. Ever. Oh, Alaskan. Oh, where's my common sense? Welcome to Simone, Mike, Alaskan, Jack, Mamba. Great to see you in chat. Folks, never vacation in California. And here's why. Because of one company, PG&E. Now that's Pacific Gas and Electric, for those of you who don't know. In its sort of frenetic mix of homicide and greed, has hammered home one of the final few nails remaining in the coffin of California. Not that the state required much help in that sense, okay? The state was doing a lovingly wonderful job by itself in the form of Governor Gavin Newsom and the rest of the Democrat supermajority in that Capitol building in 10th and L Street that I mentioned in Sacramento, doing their job of coddling criminals, excoriating law enforcement, and offering free cheese to every illegal who can possibly motate over to this state, ahead of its own homeless and ahead of its own veterans. But that's a story for another day. You know, Sacramento, or as we say on the Sackheads Against Tyranny, Shatramento on Wednesdays. So ably assisting PG&E, I have to note, have been decades and decades and decades of California and federal forest mismanagement, which has forbidden the removal of dead trees, almost all forms of logging, the clearing of forest loam and deadfall. Deadfall happens to be, you know, the dead tree branches, the dead bushes, the scrub, the continuous seasonal pine needles, and those accumulations, and more, which I can take you. I live in the mountains. I can take you to some forest locations where I can show you there's 1 to 2 feet thick of pine needles that could and should be cleared. It's the fuel of the century. And it's right there. The proscription of controlled burns, the complete and utter absolute failure of any form of coherent water resource management, water management infrastructure, like dams, reservoirs, penstocks, in the entire state. Not to even mention, so I'm going to, the nutty enviro-leftist policies which have served absolutely no purpose in California except that of killing people, animals, killing plants, killing trees, decimating thousands and thousands of acres and square miles of trees, buildings, family homes. Not to mention the reliably annual fouling of our skies, which impacts the young, the elderly, and those with various, medical breathing conditions. Hey, but who cares, right? PG&E lines and equipment were already determined to be responsible for that campfire in 2018. That was the conflagration, if you remember, that completely razed the town of Paradise, destroyed 19,000 buildings, and killed 85 California citizens as of last count. There's a story. PG&E, Cal Fire, determined that PG&E caused the campfire that destroyed the town of Paradise and killed 85. It's official. Pacific Gas and Electric caused the campfire. Officials announced that a 6-month investigation determined what many people already knew or thought, that the PG&E power lines in the high hills of Butte County ignited that devastating blaze that destroyed nearly 19,000 buildings. Almost all of it in one frantic November day. One day.
Cal Fire investigators said Wednesday that power lines owned by Pacific Gas and Electric started the 2018 campfire. The fire killed 85 people, and officials say it's the deadliest and most destructive fire in California history. The fire started on November 8th in the Pulga area of Butte County. The department said it burned more than 150,000 acres and destroyed more than 18,000 structures. CAL FIRE also said that more than 7,500 wildfires burned over 1.8 million acres in California just the last year. Investigators say they also found a second ignition site and that they determined the second fire was caused by vegetation into electrical distribution lines owned and operated by PG&E. The two fires eventually merged. PG&E could potentially face criminal charges. In February, the utility company said it believed it was probable that its equipment would be determined to be an ignition point of the 2018 Camp Fire. It also said California officials had determined the fire's starting point was near a PG&E transmission tower. California Governor Gavin Newsom released a report on wildfires last month. In the report, Newsom criticized PG&E for its involvement in fires. The company filed for bankruptcy in January after being hit with a string of lawsuits related to multiple wildfires. Unless it's granted an extension, its reorganization plan is due by the end of May.
Now, perhaps, okay, you have an understanding of why on my radio show and social media and whatnot, I portray the company as the homicidal PG&E. That's my opinion, okay? The company has not yet been found guilty of murder. But what other kind of conclusion are you going to be able to reach when the company has consistently placed maintenance and critical equipment replacement behind the needs of shareholders and the needs of the PG&E officers and the board, not just this year or last year, but for decades, with long-lasting, catastrophic, and deadly consequences.
This is the aftermath of California's deadliest and most destructive wildfire. 85 people died here in a fire that PG&E, the country's largest utility, is suspected of starting. Now, PG&E's filed for bankruptcy, which pauses any lawsuits brought by survivors. And that means those who've lost everything might get nothing at all.
This is a story about a deadly catastrophe.
Please, dear God, don't let me die.
And what happens when the government puts the interests of a corporation over people.
Bankrupt and burning.
This is what used to be my home. My husband and I moved in here over a year ago.
Though months have passed since the Camp Fire destroyed paradise, survivors like Gina Darby are still searching for anything they're able to recover.
I'm very hopeful that they find my rings. I have an antique ring that was gifted to me when I graduated high school, and a ring that my mother made from the diamonds from her wedding ring to my dad.
Pacific Gas and Electric, or PG&E, has admitted that its equipment was probably the cause of the Camp Fire.
An employee reportedly spotted flames at a utility tower in the area, the same location that CAL FIRE, which is investigating the blaze, has identified as the start of it all.
That tower is part of a century-old high-voltage transmission line that PG&E knew was a safety hazard and intended to overhaul for 5 years, but didn't. And that's the fundamental problem.
Okay, stop. 100-year-old tower.
PG&E is a privately owned corporation that answers to its shareholders and Wall Street lenders, not members of the public. Like 17-year-old Katya, whose home was completely destroyed in the Camp Fire.
That was my Grammy's house. That was never supposed to change. That was always supposed to be the same. You know, it's like it was the one thing that stayed the same throughout my entire childhood. And now it's gone.
On the morning of the fire, Katya was house-sitting for a friend when she woke up to intense smoke. The next thing she knew, firefighters were throwing her in the back of a truck.
I'm right. And they've made it very clear that they won't.
What's your name?
Here's Gavin Newsom at a press conference.
In the next town over, California Governor Gavin Newsom met with children displaced by the Camp Fire.
Smiling.
He was elected just days before the fire,
Great
and during
teeth.
his campaign, he accepted over $200,000 from PG&E.
Stop. $200,000 from PG&E. That's all about the 4 massive families of California. Have you heard about those? You're going to.
The growing demand among ratepayers that I've spoken to that PG&E be truly publicly owned. Is that something you'll support as governor?
Well, truly publicly owned. Right now, we're just trying to figure out how to deal with the immediacy, which is the need to make sure we have safe, affordable, and reliable service.
Okay, let's find out some more about Governor Newsom, okay? Governor Newsom had the temerity to smile during that press conference because he has great teeth, right? But mostly because he is Gavin Newsom, and he is, note this, bolden this, italicize this, he is entirely 100% unaffected. The Newsoms. Wait a minute. In California, there's 4 basic power families. It's the Browns, the Newsoms, the Pelosi's, and the Gettys. Did you know this? The 4 power families of California.
Pat Brown's father, Edmund Joseph Brown, was known for running scams and gambling operations in San Francisco.
Democrat.
With the help of businessman William Newsom II,
Democrat.
Pat Brown became governor of California for 2 terms. During his governorship, he awarded the Squaw Valley concession contract to William Newsom III and his partner, John Pelosi. The deal was criticized for the state of California paying for everything and getting nothing. William Newsom III grew up with the governor's son, Jerry, who was training to be a Jesuit priest. John Pelosi's son, Paul, married Nancy D'Alessandro, daughter of Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., who was known for smuggling heroin into the U.S. with Lucky Luciano and the Baltimore Mafia.
Beautiful.
John Pelosi's son, Ron, married William Newsom's daughter, Barbara. Over ongoing disputes about the Squaw Valley concession, William Newsom Sr. threatened to hurt the governor politically, just as Governor Brown was running for a 3rd term against Ronald Reagan. He lost. But 8 years later, the former governor's Jesuit son, Jerry, reclaimed the governorship in 1974.
Democrat.
He appointed William Newsom III to a Placer County judgeship in
Placer County, idiot.
1975.
Democrat.
And 3 years later, to the State Court of Appeal.
By the way, Judge Newsom used to live up by me.
William Newsom was an attorney for oil magnate J. Paul Getty, named in the 1966 Guinness Book of World Records as the world's richest private citizen. And while serving on the appellate bench in the 1980s, he helped Getty's son, Gordon, secure a change in state trust law that allowed him to claim his share of a multi-heir trust. After Newsom retired from the bench, he became administrator of the Getty Trust and provided seed money for his son Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi's nephew.
No! Did you know that? Did you know that?
To start the Plump Jack business that led to a career in San Francisco politics as mayor of San Francisco and lieutenant governor of the state of California. Gavin Newsom was informally adopted by the Gettys after his parents divorced.
No money there.
And recently succeeded family friend Jerry Brown to be the current governor of California.
Democrat. Money.
For 80 years, these 4 families have ruled over the state of California politically. And with the help of Kamala Harris, Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff, and Dianne Feinstein, California's...
By the way, you do know that Adam Schiff represents Southern California, right?
Uncontrollable state government spending has amounted to over $2 trillion in debt and the highest tax rates in the country. The homelessness population is on the rise so much that a typhus outbreak has reached epidemic levels. Thousands of needles from illicit drugs litter the streets.
Thanks, Democrats.
They have made California
money
a sanctuary state. They have been steadily chiseling away at the Second Amendment. They have passed laws for mandatory vaccinations. And they continue to aggressively oppose our president on every front. On October 1st, 2016, right before Donald Trump won the election, President Obama transferred full control of the internet from the U.S. government to an independent California nonprofit organization.
Remember that? ICANN, I-C-A-N-N.
In a cyber war scenario, the U.S. government may not have control over the internet. Even if it secures military and government domains and IP addresses, the targets in cyber warfare are likely to be civilian.
Question, why would you ever cede power from the United States of America? Answer, because you hate America.
And the U.S. government requires private sector infrastructure to operate. Since the internet underpins our computer systems, electrical grids, communication systems, and other critical infrastructure, our entire civilian society could be at risk. Who controls California?
Who do you think?
Who controls the four families?
Well,
what is a republic? For newswars.com, this is Greg Reese.
So let us not forget that those 85 persons, when they were burned to death. And they likely ended up in what is termed the pugilist's position. And no, I'm not doing a break. I'm going on to the rest of the show. The pugilistic posture, when subjected to fire, the human body initially takes on the pugilistic posture, also called the boxer's pose, because the fingers, the wrists, the elbows, and the knees flex. And this posture occurs because fire makes the muscles shrink, which in turn causes the joints to flex. Lives were destroyed. People were killed. All because of one company. The fault has already been documented, as I indicated. Now, fast forward. I just finished speaking to a California couple who went to the city of Fort Bragg. Now, Fort Bragg's a coastal town of about 7,300 people, and I'm sure about this time you're thinking, BZ, when the hell are you ever going to get to why shouldn't I vacation in California? Well, these people like to go to Fort Bragg. It's a coastal town of about, 7,300 people. It's about 137 miles north of San Francisco. It's right on the coast. And they wanted to go for a 10-day vacation on, I think it was Friday, the 25th of October. I think that was about 2 weeks ago. Okay, so they planned to stay at a recently renovated hotel overlooking the Noyo Harbor. That's right in Fort Bragg, right on the coast. Waves, sea breeze, all that great stuff. That motel has beautiful rooms, replete with gorgeous wood walls and cabinets and furniture, big hot tubs, fireplaces, balconies. They'd stayed there before, and they said they were pretty impressed with the new hotel and all of its amenities. And furthermore, they customarily stayed in Fort Bragg or that general area because they love the ocean, they like the people, they like the town. And moreover, it didn't cost 3 arms and 5 legs to stay there as opposed to like San Francisco or San Diego or Monterey. To the point where, at least for the past 10 years, Fort Bragg in that area was usually their go-to choice for vacations at least twice a year when they could afford it. Usually in the winter because there were fewer people around, better rates, big waves to look at, big storm clouds, rain, and lots of heavy weather. They're not big fans of the heat, and they kind of enjoyed the cold and the rain and the storms. The weather, the winter time, I should say. Until PG&E decided to shit on their vacation. And it will continue to shit on every other vacation in California for at least the next decade. More on that in a moment. Let's continue. PG&E admitted their faulty equipment started the Kincaid fire in Sonoma County on Wednesday, October 23rd. A fire which is still blazing as of this writing. It's about 82 to 85% contained right now. And it still has some evacuation warnings in effect. This is the article. High voltage PG&E power line break causes the origin of the massive fire in California wine country. A fast-spreading wildfire spurned by powerful winds continues to rage in Northern California on Friday, and it forced thousands of people to evacuate parts of Sonoma County. It's called the Kincaid Fire, and it cut a destructive path all across that pastoral vineyard-dotted area. Pacific Gas and Electric, the state's largest utility, told state regulators that, well, it appears that a jumper on one of its transmission towers broke close to where the fire started near Geyserville. Imagine that. But wait, it gets better, okay? Now, in the report that PG&E filed with the California PUC, which is it's been mentioned in chat already, the Public Utility Commission, PG&E said it became aware of the transmission tower malfunction at 9:20 p.m. on Wednesday. The fire began at 9:27 p.m., according to the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. So, because of that fire, PG&E decided that it was going to cut power to thousands and thousands of additional customers, not just the people in the fire. Oh, no. PG&E first thought the power would be cut that Friday night at about midnight. That was October 25th, but by that time the couple had already driven to and arrived at their beautiful hotel overlooking Noyo Harbor, because after all, this is about vacations and why you should never vacation in California again. They unpacked a bunch of suitcases and bags in anticipation of enjoying 10 days carefree right next to the ocean. Nobody had mentioned anything about cutting the power to Fort Bragg. It wasn't in the way of the flames. And that's the way it was when they left for their vacation. And, oh yeah, it took them 5 hours to get there. So yeah, they had been and were committed over the years to the town of Fort Bragg. They ate at the local restaurants. They stopped at the Safeway and the Purity and the Harvest Markets. They purchased their gas in town. They went to the local theater. They solicited the local massage therapists. They went to this cool place called Round Man Meats. They went to the North Coast Brewery, really great beer, and many other businesses. So, okay, that Friday night, though, hotel management called up and said there was a chance power might be lost by midnight. So hotel management drops air quotes, a lantern off at the door, which on a good night, it might have illuminated maybe a 6-inch circle. Okay, hey, all right, points for trying. They didn't lose power at midnight, but the couple heard the entire area was going to be losing power for a minimum of 3 days, beginning Saturday, October 26th at 5 p.m. Everything they could find on the internet said the same thing. Power might be restored by Monday, might, but that's if all the inspections required prior to the re-energization of the lines checked out. Hey, more about that later. So the couple, they had a decision to make, and they decided to leave. Why? What were the elements of their decision? Why would they leave such a beautiful coastal area? So Saturday morning at 8 a.m., they checked out after having spent one night of 10 days at that beautiful hotel. And they delineated their reasons to the manager and wished her and the hotel the best of luck. But you know what? They wouldn't be returning to their hotel or any other in the region, not for quite some time or perhaps ever. They also wished their town and region the best of luck because, you know what? Boy, they are going to need it. Now, the manager, much to her credit, tried to get them to return. Okay, we're going to have our own generator shortly, she said. Well, they just didn't have one right now. And you know what? The Safeway down the street, it's going to have its own generator, and so will one of the delis. And that's all well and good, the couple pointed out. But when people take a vacation, they do so in order to relax thoroughly and completely. Planning a vacation, that can be stressful in and of itself. But now you have to, in California, attempt to foresee weather and power and the complications inherent from all those variables. And that's a lot to ask of a lot of vacationers, of most vacationers, including that couple. So they agreed, with the manager, we could go to the Safeway, we could get food, but we couldn't cook in our room, could we? No microwave in the room, no kitchen, and pretty soon on a vacation, you're going to get really damn tired of eating at one deli day after day. Though, okay, it did have power. Luckily, their car was gas-powered. But what if they had a Tesla? Or what if they failed to fill up after arrival and notification their gasoline-powered car? Where could they quick charge a Tesla? Well, you can do that in Fort Bragg. Not that many places. Priuses and hybrids, okay, they require gas. Well, who can pump gas when the power goes out? Because the pumps require electric power. And who can charge a Tesla when the power goes out? Not too many people that I'm aware of. Okay, do you guys understand the difference between level 2 and level 3 charging stations? You better start to understand that, because now if you've got an electric car, that's going to become another factor in planning your vacation to lovely California, spell it with a K. Here's an article that says blackouts. California's electric car dream is turning into a nightmare. Imagine that. Imagine this. You got to evacuate your house due to fire, but you can't because for the past 5 days, you've had no electricity, nothing to recharge your electric vehicle. Your tax dollars and your private dollars went to save the planet, and now you can't even save yourself. Governor Newsom is telling us this is the new normal, government-controlled energy that is unstable and completely reliable. California energy is about as reliable in the former Golden State as it is in Cuba or Venezuela. Both third world countries. How soon before businesses and families flee the state to save themselves? The blackouts, which one might expect from a third world or a mismanaged nation like Venezuela or even Pakistan. By the way, Pakistan leads the world in the number of annual blackouts. Those situations are life and death for some California residents. And the problem isn't expected to be resolved anytime soon. But it may also mean life and death for California's plan to encourage residents to adopt electric vehicles. So, at least they were smart. The couple was smart. They had realized they had to get their car and fill it up with gas before anybody else. Because if they wanted to get back to their home near Sacramento, an area which never went dark because its power is provided by SMUD, the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, and they don't interchange with PG&E, and they have their very own separate sources of power, they don't rely on PG&E for anything. So they discovered it's somewhat about getting into your vacation spot, and perhaps more importantly, now in the new California, it's about your ability to get out. Let's say that you're in an area that isn't under the immediate assault of a wildfire in California. Wildfires, they're a topic for another day, okay? But let's say you're participating, or you're anticipating, I should say, entering an area on your vacation where PG&E may fear wildfires. If you're planning a vacation to California, you better understand the areas affected by the utility, the electric private utility, PG&E. This is right out of their statement. PG&E provides natural gas and electricity to most of the northern 2/3 of California, from Bakersfield and to the north side of the county of Santa Barbara to near the Oregon state line, and Nevada and Arizona, the state line, which represents only 5.2 million households. So now in terms of preparing your vacation to California, you better consult a PG&E coverage map in order to determine if you are going to be subject to mandatory power cutoffs just on the whim of PG&E. The first thing you should now ask is, okay, so what territories are covered by PG&E? PG&E, if you don't know, has maps that you can find on the internet. And in a blog post that I made, I posted those maps, and you can see on the internet. PG&E serves 16 million people across a 70,000 square mile service area in northern and central California. So there's a map of PG&E's electric service territory. That includes the bulk of California. You want to see by the way, you want to see the California coast in the summer? beware. On the other hand, if you're not interested in seeing the coast, you know what? That Southern California desert is always a great place to be in the summer because it is going to have an assload of power. Because deserts in the summer in California, that's the place to go. So PG&E is one of 4 regulated investor-owned utilities in California. The others are Pacific Corp, Pacific Power, Southern California Edison, and Sempra. They're San Diego Gas and Electric. So I invite you, everyone, to make sure that you know and realize what portions of California are not controlled by or subject to PG&E coverage, because it's in your best interest. Because if you do essentially anything in California, either short or in particular long-term, or a vacation, I'm sure you already heard PG&E, as you may or may not know. Well, you heard it. They declared bankruptcy in January 2019 because of $3 billion of liabilities from the 2018 wildfires. And PG&E has a literal chokehold on California. It is a monopoly in terms of power availability for locations less than, major population centers. Other areas, however, they conjured that they were somehow inviolate. And some of these areas thought that they would never see any kind of ramifications of laboring under the PG&E label. Like Berkeley went dark. And Oakland went dark. And certain other really high dollar areas like Marin and Sonoma and Napa. And these rich pricks were gobsmacked that PG&E had the temerity to cut their damn power. Here's one thing we do know. These power shutoffs didn't occur until after PG&E was sued. Although the weather conditions, they haven't changed. The weather conditions haven't changed for decades. Here's a fact. The Santa Ana winds occur every year in Southern California. You can make book on it. High winds can occur in Northern California at any time. And, they always have. Imagine that. Here's another reason that you should never vacation in California. If you are there, you are extraneous baggage as a vacationer during a PG&E power shutoff. You're not a member of whatever community you're visiting, and quite frankly, your presence and that of your family, that's an unnecessary, unneeded, and unwanted drag on whatever resources are available for the actual residents who live there. It's their town. So you're going to either be one, in the way, or two, you're going to be another drain on the finite number of solutions to the overall problems required. So let's be blunt. Actual residents need the resources first. And that was another reason my friends left Fort Bragg. They realized they were soon to become a liability to that community and likely an obstruction. And thank God they had the common sense to leave and become less of a burden upon the needs of locals, because that area did go dark. And it went dark for almost 5 days. Vacation. Wouldn't you like to have a vacation in the dark where nothing electric worked? Boy, that'd be an assload of fun. Your iPad, your iPod, your iPod, your tablet, your laptop, your cell phone, all the stuff you take, that ain't going to work. So what's the future of vacationing in California? And again, I have to say, consult the most recent electrical power map available before you take a chance at booking a room almost anywhere in the state, except for major population centers. Okay? And, I forgot to tell you, this is an attraction. Los Angeles and San Francisco, you now have, of course, the appealing issue of having to wade through piles of human poo, puddles of human piss, hypodermic syringes, and the return of lovely medieval age diseases like leprosy and typhus, with an enticing helping of tuberculosis and hepatitis. Now that is a vacation to admire. Don't you think, folks? I sure as hell do. California wildfire season can range from like midsummer to October into November or beyond, depending upon the weather forecast. This is nothing new either. California has always had cyclical droughts. Southern California is nothing but a big-ass desert. That's the truth. Pretty much the entire region of Southern California is built on a desert. But hey, nobody ever tells you that. LA, that doesn't look like a desert. So what's the future? NPR, of all places, says, this is the headline, "Are blackouts the future for California?" After millions of Californians endured a power shutdown earlier this month, state officials are demanding that utilities find ways to reduce the impact of outages. Blackouts are almost certain to happen again to prevent devastating wildfires. In fact, power company Pacific Gas and Electric now says customers can expect outages for at least a decade as it upgrades its systems. Clue in, Californian. Pacific Gas and Electric now says customers can expect outages for at least a decade. Wired.com wrote, "This is interesting. Power..." At this point, folks, just thought I'd tell you, it looks like I'm going to go into overtime. Just that I'd give you a heads up. Wired.com wrote, "Power shutoffs can't save California from wildfire hell." Well, wait a minute. PG&E seems to think so. A staggering 800,000 customers will lose power across the state starting Wednesday, but that won't fix the mess that California's made. On Wednesday and Thursday, high seasonal winds will... Seasonal winds! That's called a clue. That means they're there every season. That's what that means. They're going to tear through California, drying out vegetation and fanning wildfires. The conditions could easily spell a devastating, deadly conflagration, which it did. In preparation, PG&E, whose equipment sparked last year's campfire, which killed 86 people and destroyed the town of Paradise, will begin preemptively shutting off power to a staggering 800,000 customers. Well, these stats are just in. That was 1.7 million customers. What a privilege to have PG&E. Come on. Those customers are not happy, and for good reason. Losing power is a hassle for anybody. Really? A hassle? Oh, but it's potentially deadly for those who rely on electrical medical devices. Businesses lose business, food spoils in warming fridges, and critical infrastructure goes offline. But this is no shot in the dark. Meteorologists can predict where and when those winds will grow dire so PG&E can target their shutoffs. Except when they can't see them, like one of the shutoffs that occurred about a month ago. It's a calculus that climate change is making increasingly familiar. Bullshit. It's ignorance and ignoring of critical infrastructure, water, electric power, and forest management. There isn't any in California. Come on. Forest management? Fuck it. It doesn't exist. But this is interesting. Wired writes, blaming the climate alone would be letting California off the hook. Its policies and building habits are also responsible for the darkness that must now descend on northern portions of the state. Bingo. And this is a perfect description heretofore avoided because of its accuracy. California's wildfire problem grows from a clash of contrasts. In the atmosphere at this time of year, pressure builds up in the air masses over the Great Basin east of the state. At the same time, a low-pressure region takes shape near the coast. Because air tends to move from high to low-pressure areas, Captain Obvious weighs in, winds start accelerating from the northeast towards the coast. The greater this pressure gradient, the stronger the winds. As the winds move over the Sierra Nevadas in eastern California, they flow like water over rocks in a stream, compressing and warming, slicing through valleys. The winds gather more speed, desiccating the air. If you can imagine the atmosphere over your head as a sponge, you can't wring it out anymore, says Daniel Swain, a climate scientist at UCLA. So, you got to ask yourself, why wouldn't you have wanted to minimize the fuel available to burn in the entire state of California? You knew of this problematic existence for decades and decades at ground level. The warm air screaming through the mountains sucks away whatever moisture might be left in the vegetation, which is increasingly little as the climate warms in California and autumn grows increasingly dry. California is almost always in a drought. Always has been, and probably always will be. This is the same in the 40s, in the 30s, in the 50s when I grew up, in the 60s when I grew up, in the 70s when I grew up, and it isn't changing now. California is experiencing the perfect trifecta of wildfire disasters. It is a perfect storm, if you will, and PG&E is right smack dab in the middle of it. PG&E, writes Wired.com, bears outsized responsibility for this mess. Its dismal safety record includes, only 17 major wildfires in 2017 alone. Miles and miles of electrical lines crisscross the landscape, providing ample opportunity for ignition. A solution might be to bury the lines, but that's expensive and often not feasible in rocky regions. Okay, I can see that. Trim your lines. No. In an ideal world, all of these mountain towns would operate on their own self-contained, solar-powered microgrids, but that's too wildly expensive. Okay, hold that thought there for a second, buckaroo. Solar power. Isn't that going to be a major panacea to all of this? Solar power. The electricity goes down, but the sun is still in the sky. It's California. Then there's this. And nobody has written about this. And nobody has told you about this. I discovered this. I recently discovered there is this critically important little sentence buried in the midst of that article, the following article from, where'd I find it? ABC7news.com, which inadvertently, I believe, tells you much about PG&E and the condition of its lines from that ABC7news.com article. The headline is, PG&E says essentially all customers restored after outages. Okay, great. That's from Friday, let's see, when was that? November 1st, 2019. PG&E has restored power to essentially all customers impacted by the October 29th public safety power shutoff. They called it a piss, or PSPS. IBZ. I called it a piss. Currently, 1,400 total piss impacted customers remain out of power. Okay, that's good. Power was being restored. Hey, did anybody think about this? No. Transformers, high voltage power lines, and associated heavy electrical equipment is designed, as you would expect on any average electrical grid, to work constantly and dependably. It was designed to take high loads, some occasional power spikes, and the occasional outage when lines break, and power is diverted. Because lines break. Trees fall down. Those things happen. But it wasn't designed to be started and stopped like the engine on your car, and that's what PG&E is doing to these lines. None of it was engineered to be de-energized and then re-energized with any kind of regular frequency. That's not the job of that equipment. Its job is to carry big voltage. Now, You recall how PG&E has consistently made something of a big deal about re-energizing its equipment and the subsequent checks that they got to make prior to restoring power. That's what they've said. Well, apparently there's an excellent reason for this. Because this easily ignored and likely bypassed tidbit exists 6 paragraphs down, very quietly. In the article, and it says this, one sentence. PG&E said inspectors found 55 instances of damage to their equipment statewide. Stop. PG&E inspectors, people whose job it is to monitor lines and apparatus following de-energization, because they say following de-energization, before they re-energize, they got to inspect. Why would they have to inspect? Does PG&E know, or do other electrical equipment and transformer manufacturers know? Do they know what kind of damage is done when you place such stress on those systems under those circumstances with now regularity? Because that shit wasn't built for that. You know, I think I could make a pretty good argument for saying there's even greater stress being placed on PG&E lines and equipment already in questionable shape by bringing the system up and down to the point where you got to ask, is doing this jeopardizing customers with an even greater risk of arcing, flashing, and resulting wildfires? You know, smart people are going to want to have answers to those questions. Well, look, I mentioned this earlier. Look, there have to be some mitigating factors to all this power stuff, right? Because, I mean, that's stupid, BZ, to say never vacation in California again. There are mitigating factors to all of this power stuff, right? Solar power, generators, lots and lots of flashlights. You know, that should help when the juice goes off, right? I know this is what a lot of people are saying now. I know, say a bunch of smaller jurisdictions most recently, we'll start our own power companies. Hold that thought, Gaylord. And oddly enough, just at a time when California has so righteously mandated that electric vehicles become absolutely endemic in, I don't know what, just a couple of years in the future, anybody besides me seeing any kind of a potential conflict here? Here's an article. Blackouts. California's electric car dream is turning into a nightmare. Oh, that's sad. That's so sad. That's very sad. Very sad. Imagine you got to evacuate your home due to fire, but you can't because for the past 5 days you had no electricity, nothing to charge your electric vehicle. Your tax dollars and private dollars went to save the planet, and you can't save yourself. People have been fleeing California for quite some time. This just happens to be the electric blue icing on the proverbial escapist cake, I guess you could say. ClimateDepot.com. If you guys haven't visited ClimateDepot.com, boy, you got to go there. Oh, before I do that, maybe, let's see, I should do this. I should at least identify the network right now, because I am clearly over my head in overtime right now. What network is this?
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
You should be going to ClimateDepot.com, because boy, have they got some enlightening stuff there. The blackouts may mean life and death for California's plan to encourage residents to adopt electric vehicles. California already is on a whole bunch of levels a third world country, and it's replete with diseases, and it's festooned with poop. And boy, that's really appealing. But you got to ask yourself, is this a good thing? Billions are going to have to spend, billions of dollars are going to have to be spent to retrofit gas stations for EV chargers. Homes are going to have to spend thousands to create personal rechargers. And the government-owned utilities, guess what? they are going to raise the price of electricity. Stop. Use your brain. When you depend on a commodity, just like petroleum and fossil fuels, because of your lifestyle and that of most everybody else, does that mean prices are simply going to plummet? Oh, gosh, no. The electric companies are going to have you by the low-hanging fruities. Bigly. And yet, let's use common sense as an example. All throughout the United States, remember, electric utility companies were and have been telling you to conserve your power. You think your rates are going to go down because, well, you're using less electricity, right? You're being a good citizen. You're conserving, right? Wrong. In cases like those, and this has definitely happened in the past, recently, on the East Coast, those utilities had to increase rates because, after all, they weren't making as much money, were they? Billions in tax incentives to get the economic illiterate to buy a car that the government is going to control, and watch as people become aware of the electric vehicle scam by government trying to end petroleum vehicle use in this state. At the same time, at least for the next 10 years, because infrastructure doesn't grow on trees, you ain't going to have the juice to power your electric car in almost 2/3 of the state of California, and especially in the summer. Okay. So let's recap now about our potential vacation in California, spelled with a K. If it's summer in PG&E territory and you're on through the fire season up to and including November and possibly December, you're going to lose power. Hello, darkness, my old friend. It doesn't work so well on vacation. Are you guaranteed there won't be now PG&E blackouts in the winter with their already challenged and stressed lines and equipment? You better ask yourself that question, too. Experts say the current electrical provider issues with PG&E will likely, and I don't see any reason why this is going to change. They say this is going to continue into the next decade. Maybe longer. Okay, here's the other deal. Remember I mentioned solar? Solar will solve everything. Do you guys have solar? Do you know how it works? You can't solar yourself out of a power blackout. Oh, unless you've gone the extra really expensive mile and purchased your own commercial-grade battery backup set, which most people don't have. Also, don't bring your electric car. You won't get out. Don't bring your laptop, iPad, cell phone, tablet, or other electrical device you so love on your vacation. You best hope your petroleum-based vacation vehicle always has sufficient fuel to escape PG&E territory and get out at least 200 to 300 miles out to gas stations whose pumps are actually working. And, oh yeah, the restaurants and the theaters and the various local attractions don't really look so very damn inviting when they're dark during the day and at night. And, oh yeah, there are not going to be nearly enough generators to go around in California because, well, everybody wants one now. Generac, for example, one of the biggest, largest great generator manufacturers, they don't really have any kind of infrastructure or a presence in California because up until now, well, they haven't needed one. So Generac is saying, well, we don't even have sales offices in California. And everybody in PG&E territory, if they have a buck to rub together, and many people don't, but if they do, they're going to want a generator. Where are they going to get, within a reasonable amount of time, 1 to 1.5 million generators? and solar arrays. And commercial battery packs to store your juice. Because otherwise, solar does nothing unless you can store it somewhere. So, folks, little important safety tip from me to you. Do yourself a massive favor. You go vacation in Cuba or Venezuela, or as I want to say, beautiful downtown Mogadishu, because it's likely going to be more reliable, cheaper, and safer, and cleaner than California.
Monsieur has been locked!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Oh my gosh! Thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon right here on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you'll find me on Twitter at BZEP, BZEP, and my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. For a while, the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. And Pratt & Whitney Engines Thrust. You can trust. Tiaras by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle 1 refueling team, with whom I shall be consorting in less than an hour. Thanks to Andrew Pollack for being here tonight. Thanks to everybody listening live right now. Thanks to you for being in chat. Thanks to everybody for listening in podcast. I appreciate each and every one of you folks for taking the time out of your busy day or night to do it. You guys have a great weekend. God bless, take care, and be safe. Tuesday night, the return of Brandon Straka. Walk Away here in the Saloon.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.